Welcome. Our next speaker was with Fairfax County Fire and Rescue for over 25 years, retired as assistant chief, went out to Tucson and became the 28th fire chief, I think, out there. So we're welcoming Chief Charles Ryan presenting the first 5 minutes. Thank you, Chief
Thanks,
Ryan.
man. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. So my name is Chuck Ryan, and I am blessed to be the fire chief in the city of Tucson, Arizona. And a couple of things I found sitting in the back of the room this morning. The cursing barrier has been broken, so that's really good for me. And the walking around piece has been broken too, so that's good because I'm highly caffeinated right now and I'm not good at standing still. So a little bit about me. Like Lynn said, I've been in the fire service now more than 30 years. Started in Fairfax County, Virginia, which is one of the largest combination departments in the country. Started as a volunteer, did about 3 years of volunteer time, then got hired in the career side, and it's been on the way up since there. And so this program, some people wonder, like, hey, why is a fire chief talking about this stuff? Like, why aren't I hearing about this from a captain or a battalion chief? And I actually started doing this program as a captain from Fairfax. It's been at FDIC for the past 15, 16 years, something like that. And I love to take this show on the road and talk to other groups, state chief conferences, and other places about it. It's important to me, and this is why I got into this, talking about this topic, because over my career, and for those with some gray hair know what I'm talking about, the fire service used to be really simple, right? We used to run fires and go to car crashes and medical calls. And in the past 15 years or so, 20 years, we've added terrorism, hazmat, tech rescue, you name it, we've added it, right? Who else is going to do it? Nobody else is going to do it. And as a result, we've become better at the stuff that doesn't happen as frequently than we are with the stuff we do every single day. And as I progressed through my prior department, and I would hear fire officers and battalion chiefs, division chiefs giving on-scene reports, they were horrible. They're horrible. And it set the stage for a lot of problems. And thank God we did not have a active line of duty death in Fairfax County on an incident during my time there. But it really made me think, like, hey, we need to be better at the basics, right? So this program I want to get you thinking about where your head is at and the things you need to be thinking about. And as officers, if you've got a radio and you're responsible for making an on-scene report or a situation report, how and what you should say. And I'll tell you the reasons why behind it. So if you do any study of Maydays, right, firefighter down, we all know the vast majority of those occur within the first 5 to 8 minutes of the first truck arriving on scene. Right? And rarely are they accidents, right? There's a causal link to every one of those, every single one. And so as you look at these photos that are up here, you're all, depending upon your level of experience, right? Chief Klein talked about experience, time and service, and what your role is, you're seeing different things. And that's good. You all should see something different in each one of these photos. But as the company officer, right? So I'm talking to you folks that ride the right front seat and first in chief officers, right? The first 5 minutes, what your officer does in those first 5 minutes can set the tone if you're going to have a good outcome or not, quite honestly. Rarely do bad things just happen out of the blue. So what are these things? Well, they're the NIOSH 5, right? If you're a student of this job, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't, right? These are the top 5 reasons. If you took all of NIOSH's body of work on firefighter line of duty death reports, these are the top 5 reasons. They resonate, every single one. And it doesn't matter if it's the Houston Fire Department or the Peekskill Volunteer Fire Department in New York, right? Whether you're running a 5-person engine crew or a 2-person crew, doesn't matter. These are the same 5 things. Improper risk assessment is the number one. Crappy size up. Crappy size up. All right. Number two, lack of incident command. Who's in charge? Who's the adult in the room? A lot of these times you read these reports and when you read them, it's terrifying because you can see what's coming, right? Hindsight's always 20/20 vision, but you can see this error chain starting to link together and you know it's not going to end well, right? A lack of accountability, meaning no accountability system. And this is hard in volunteer departments where people are responding POV. I get it, right? Showing up and they're dragging their gear out of the trunk of their car and getting their shit on and stuff on and going to work and maybe not checking in with command, right? Risky stuff, right? Poor communications, not necessarily hardware, the software, the peopleware, not communicating well, not knowing how to use the radio, right? Not knowing what to say, not knowing what the failure points are. And then the last one, lack of or to follow or a failure or absence of policies. Every fire is a new fire. The game, there's a reason that some teams are really successful and some teams aren't, because the ones that are really successful execute the play every time. Right? If we could just get our service nationally to execute a single family dwelling fire the same way, and I don't mean with the same resources, I get it. We're going to talk about this a little bit. But if we could approach it in a systems-based fashion, we'd have far fewer firefighter fatalities. Hands down. But we refuse to do it. We refuse to do it. So I want to take you a little trip through history here, and not to bring everybody down, but this is a look back over the past 5 years at firefighter fatalities. 2020, 96 firefighter fatalities categorized as line of duty deaths. Of those, 6 attributed to what I call on-scene operations, right? So I'm not, having been a countywide shift commander at a time when we had a fella not wake up at the firehouse one morning, I'm not taking anything away from people who suffer a medical event while on duty or a medical event after, clearing a call and going home, or the next day or during training, things like that. Fully honorable, right? What I'm talking about, though, for purposes of this presentation, are those incidents where people are disoriented, run out of air, trapped in a collapse, those sort of quote unquote battleground fatalities. So that's what we're talking about here with those 6. 1/3 in 2020 were due to COVID, right? The C word. 2021, 141 firefighter fatalities, 16 now attributable to on-scene operations, right? Which is 11%, almost 12%, and then a much higher number of COVID-related fatalities. 2022, here we go. Numbers relatively consistent, right? 96. All right. So the COVID thing has kind of tailed off now. But again, 9 of those are combat related injuries or fatalities. Sorry. And then 2023. All right. Let's see. What do we have in 2023? 81. 10 of those were during firefighting operations. So the percentages are staying roughly the same year to year to year. And like Chief Silvernail said earlier today, I'm not up here saying that we're going to get to 0 firefighter fatalities in the United States and fireground operations. That's just not, while noble and a goal, I'm not so sure it's attainable. I'm not going to get up here and give you that Pollyanna view that, hey, we can do this. Like we do risky stuff, really risky stuff. And so when you put people in harm's way, sometimes people get hurt, right? So that's 2023. Here's where we are today. Getting into the 4th quarter of the year, 46 firefighter fatalities. Of those, 5 or 11% non-medical emergencies during on-scene operations. Montana's had 1 firefighter fatality this year so far. And this is what it looks like in bar chart form or bar graph form. So you can kind of see that those reds are relatively consistent. So my question rhetorically is, how come we're not getting better? And I don't believe the answer is, you're not going to sell me that the answer is because we do risky stuff, because that's a constant. That's been the constant since the beginning of the fire service, right? So why is that red not getting better? And I'm going to challenge you to think about that a little bit. I want to show a video to you here. This is a close call incident we had in Fairfax County. I'm only going to run like the first 5-ish minutes of it so you can see, but a little bit of backdrop for this. This fire took place less than a mile and a quarter from the quarters for that engine and ladder. It was a Saturday morning, early in the morning, kitchen fire in a row house, townhouse. These things are like the state flower of Northern Virginia, but end unit, constructed in the 1980s. So pretty sturdy construction, masonry firewall between that and the attached structure, right? So, and it's an end of run unit. So I want you to listen to the dispatch. You're going to hear the dispatch. The picture, anybody here remember the movie Blair Witch Project? Anybody? Yeah, okay, right. So it gets a little helter-skelter because it's a citizen video taken from across the street. But I want you to watch this and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Go. Oh, I know what I need to do here. You tell me how I get this to the full presenter, not the presenter view, the full screen view, because it won't run otherwise. Oh, it's going to be way too loud. Yeah. This doesn't count against my time. Uh-huh. No, there's talking in there. On the test run, remember?
While we're going in the second. Unit responding to the townhouse fire on Soldier Court. She is advised that.
Okay, we sorted it. Go for it.
422, 405, 427, 426, truck 422, R 405, Medic squad 426, Medic 422, EMS 405 and 406, Science 405 and 404, truck 4 Delta R 2200 for a townhouse fire, 6827, as report. Unit respond. While we're going in the second. Unit responding to the townhouse fire on Soldier Court. She advised that she states everyone is out of the house. Agent 422 is on the scene. Reasonable townhouse from all three sides. Got fire on the first floor, smoke showing from all three sides. And the engine 3/4 versus transfer. Superintendent 422 on scene in unit townhouse. Fire on the first floor, south. Engine 3/4, traffic command. County 4 heavy direct. 422. Now, engine 3/4, the first floor. 1/4, is out, and that's engine 3/4. Third floor. Correct to the county 4 heavy direct. 4 direct. Engine 4 heavy direct. Direct. 426 to Fairfax. It's 22 give a layout or anything. Water supply. 422, 426. What's that wrong? Sorry about that. Okay, no problem. Engine 426 is on the scene. Operating established Clouser for connection. Right out for the structure. Take a second to assign it. Frequency establishing Clouser. Command for the structure. Take a second to 0758. Correction 3000.
Watch the window on the first floor in the Charlie Delta.
404 is on the scene. We're going to make a quick glance and we'll take him in. As soon as that's off. Full bar, those things, no full bar. 94 air traffic, and do a lap around, take them in front of the structure, so 05 I'm director on scene. Is there another unit that had traffic? Okay, go ahead. Fourth one, fourth, the glass over on the first floor. So we'll get to some additional medic units. I copied medic 422 to report to the command post. Yes, last over on the first floor. Was there anything else?
All right. I'm going to stop it there. So, what are some things you picked up on? What did the dispatcher tell the crew, the first in engine company, engine 422? Caller reported everybody was out of the house, right? Not always a guarantee. You heard the captain, after he gave his size up report, came back and reported homeowner confirms every nose, counted noses, everybody's accounted for, right? What else? What else did you notice in that video? Did you notice the smoke conditions? Right. I asked you to watch the window on the Charlie Delta corner. You saw the fire come out of there. Here's what happened. Here's what happened to cause that. Two very experienced fire crews, poor, less than optimal coordination of ventilation and fire attack. So the truck company did what truck companies do. I call it the random smashing of glass party. They went in, executed a right-hand search, which in these structures, you come in the front door. There's a dividing partition wall. You can go straight back. You can see from front to back. You walk in the front door. You can see the kitchen in the back and look in the kitchen window to the backyard. There's a hall bathroom. There's stairs on your left that go up to the second level. And if there's a third level, a below grade, there's stairs that go down. So that's on your left side. On the right side, there's an opening, a partition. You go into what is the living room area, basically. And then that's a shotgun run back straight to where the dining area is. So very open floor plan by and large. It was a kitchen fire, well-involved kitchen fire. The engine company goes in with the hose line and advances right towards the seat of the fire. Right? Because it was so smoky in the house, the truck crew, they didn't narrow corridor. They couldn't get past the engine company. So they go to the right and they start breaking windows, creating a flow path, right? Worst thing you can do. Now, this was 13 years ago. Flow path was not necessarily being discussed in that great detail in that period of time, right? But there's a method to the madness. There's a reason to the science. And I show that video because in the first 5 minutes of them being on scene, they had 3 members from the truck company pretty severely burned. So, but for the fact that they were wearing all of their gear and wearing it properly is why we didn't have a line of duty death or a medically related retirement out of it, just some lost time and some painful burn recovery. So take a look at this picture. What are some things you notice in here? What are some things you're seeing? Come on, wake up, right? Look at that smoke, right? Pretty angry, right? Volume, velocity, color, and density. That's a hot fire somewhere in that house. What else you notice? Other than the fact that it's too many people trying to get in the front door. And crappy hose line management too. Right? Look, yes, very good. So thermal plane. If you look off to the left of the stairwell there, you see where the masonry foundation meets the band board of the house. You see the smoke pushing out from there? A little bit. It's kind of tough to see, right? So where do you think this fire is in this house? Below grade, right? It's below the main level, below the level they're coming in. For the smoke to come out under pressure from that band board tells me it's below grade. This is a single family house. The other thing that's worth noting is look at the smoke. So look at the window on the left, right? Smoke coming out of that window on the left, in addition to the front door. The window on the right's perfectly clean. What does that probably tell you about that room? Door is closed. Survivability profile, pretty good, right? Right. Also, so my point is to get your sort of your size up juices flowing here, because as you look at this, right, depending upon whether you're a chief officer, a company officer, or a line firefighter, you're seeing and taking in different things and making different evaluations. And that's what size up is, right? Size up is simply an evaluation of conditions and problems that are going to affect the outcome of the incident. Right? And everybody's got to do it in order to be good, right? If you want to be good, but it's done with those different perspectives, right? And different responsibilities. Right? Your engineer, your driver operator, he or she's got one thing on their mind, multiple things, but they're focused on what they need to do. Your company officer's focused on what he or she needs to do. Your line firefighter or firefighters are focused on what they need to do. And they all see different things. You all see different things. The 4 things that go into it: facts, probabilities, possibilities. And then the last one I have on here is your resources. Right? Some things are fact. You look at some of these pictures, right? Fact. Nighttime, fact. Multi-story apartment complex in that upper left picture, right? Definite fact. Possibilities. High occupant load. Nighttime in a multifamily dwelling. Yeah, pretty good. Okay. Your resources, possibilities, fire travel. Where's it going to go? Where is the fire been? Where's it going to go? Where are you going to do your evacuation if people haven't already self-evacuated? Things like that. Same thing for all these pictures. The resources is something I think is worth talking about, because I am blessed to work in a metro fire department. I've worked in 2 now, and where companies are falling all over each other trying to get to, getting into the scene. Typically, you're not waiting. I can tell you in Tucson, the likelihood of a unit operating alone on a working incident is probably more than 60 seconds is pretty darn low. By the time the first engine or truck, whatever the first apparatus is that arrives, somebody else is there pretty quick. I know that's not the case everywhere. I understand that, right? But what I'm saying to you is, here in Montana, right, we're a lot of rural communities, and a lot of my partners in Arizona face this. Where's your help coming from? Where's your help coming from? What is even coming to help you? Maybe it's nothing, right? Or maybe it's 2 folks in a type 3. Like, who knows, right? I don't know. But keep that in mind as you're doing your situation and scene size up, right? And before, especially if you're the decision maker, you're going to commit somebody to harm's way, know what resources you have available to you. So when do we do it? Well, really, and I say you do this when the tones drop. You can pre-plan a building all you want. I think it's great. It's super important, especially for your high hazard occupancies, or the ones you don't go into very often. Do you need to do pre-plans on single family dwellings or a Walgreens or something? No, right? But like hospitals, schools, big box stores, things like that, like knowing where your fire department connections are, knowing where the alarm panel is, all these kinds of things are super important. But you can't really size up an incident until the incident happens. Okay. But you use the information that you gather during pre-planning. And I'll say this about pre-planning. You can, and I encourage new company officers, when I teach in our Captain Development Academy in Tucson, I encourage them, like, hey, when you go to an EMS call, because it's 82% of our call volume, right? Pre-plan the house, right? The neighborhood's full of them. They're all going to be generally the same layout, right? So pre-plan it. Where's the kitchen? Where's the utility? We don't have a lot of basements. We don't have desert. We don't have basements in the desert. Just not a thing, right? So most of these are slab on grade, right? If it's a 2-story or 3-story, where's your stairwells? Do you have more than one stairwell? Things like that. Look around and see, right? Don't just sit there with your hands in your pockets, kicking rocks, waiting for the ambulance company to show up. Do something productive with your time that may save somebody's life later. It's a hard mentality to change. I get it. Right? I was there. I didn't fall out of the sky into a fire chief to a 5 bugle job, but you got to do it, and you got to motivate your people to do it, because it does matter. So we live in a world of acronyms. I think it's kind of a running battle between police, fire, and militaries who can come up with the most creative acronyms. But these are a couple in the fire service, and we're going to get to the one that I like to rely on and have talked about for many years. But slicers and dicers, all right? Who has heard of those? Okay. When I say strategic or tactical, and is there a difference, it's rhetorical. Slicers is more strategic. Dicers is definitely a tactical thing. I get it. They're perfectly fine. They don't replace what I consider to be the sort of the gold standard for size up acronyms. All right. Because and my good friend Slicers was developed by a guy named Eddie Buchanan in Hanover County, Virginia, which is near Richmond, when he was the assistant operations chief there. And I always kid with Eddie because he's like, "Oh man, Chuck, this thing about size up, you're putting too much on the table, blah blah blah." I'm like, well, it's the number one thing in your recipe list here, right? Like your cake, your bacon for Slicers, the number one thing is size up. What's size up? And so we have good banter about that. And Eddie's a good friend of mine. So anyway, not saying there's anything wrong with these, right? But you got to use them at the right time. You got to use them at the right time. So I subscribe to this one, and I didn't come up with this. I learned this when I studying for a lieutenant's test in 1997, 98. It's straight out of John Norman's Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics, then in its second edition. Now it's like in its fifth or sixth, right? But Cole was well. These 13 traditional elements of size up, you cannot go wrong. You will not go wrong if you process these. And I'm going to, as we go through this presentation for the next 45-ish minutes, we're going to talk through like how you can do that, because it seems daunting. But again, with the experience and the training piece, right, you become very good at this. You can become very good at it. So the C, Cole, construction. What type of construction are you dealing with for your incident? Right? Is it a, type 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 building? The majority of fires we run are in type 5 lightweight wood frame structures, single family dwellings, by and large, or mobile homes, which, like Chief Klein mentioned, in Horry County, we have a bazillion of them in Tucson because we got snowbirds, and snowbirds love to live in mobile home parks for the winter months. So, and they like to spend a lot of money in Tucson, which is cool. But what type of building are you dealing with? Where are the void spaces? What's the compartmentation like? So as you arrive on scene, that's one of the first things I tell people. What is this structure? What are you dealing with? The occupancy. Right? So now you know what the structure is. What's in it? Right? What is it? And is it being used as its intended use, or what's its actual use? A single family home, and we've got a lot of these, and you probably have them here. I'm sure you do. You have a single family home designed for 3 to 6 occupants typically, and somebody comes in and buys it and turns it into a care home. And now you have up to 3 or 4 staff with double occupancy bedrooms, maybe somebody sleeping in what was a living room, people with limitations on their mobility and stuff. So is that single family home really a single family home anymore? Now, if you know your area, your first due area, pre-planning, that'll help you with that. Right? But when you first roll up, especially say you're a fill company, you're covering another area, you might not know that, right? Your CAD notes may not even reflect it. Right? Things like that. So what is the building and what's in it are good to know. The area and height of the building. This is super important because it lets you know, A, how much you have to search, right? Where you need to look for savable lives. Right? Where are your escape routes? Okay. Where's the fire now? Where could it potentially go? Again, all these things, processing fast. And for those who have not been in the front seat of an engine or a ladder for a period of time, think back to your very first fire as an officer. That's what I tell people. I remember it like it was yesterday because I was scared, nervous, anxious, not necessarily scared. Because here I am, I'm expected now I passed the test, and 2 weeks later I get promoted, and now I got the helmet and I'm expected to perform well, know what I'm doing, and not get myself or my people killed. And try to contain it to the block of origin kind of thing. It's nervous. It's nerve wracking. And I get that. So we'll talk about practicing this a little bit too. So area and height of building, knowing special buildings in your jurisdiction, things like that. Nursing homes are a huge challenge, set apart from the life hazard, just different access issues and so on and so forth, high rises or mid rises, all that stuff, because it's not a single family dwelling. If you ever get a chance to listen to John Sullivan, John was a lieutenant in the Worcester Fire Department, Worcester, Massachusetts, the day of the cold storage warehouse fire, and he lost 2 members of his engine company. And John's very, very open and honest about the mistakes the Worcester Fire Department made that day. And he says, we tried to fight that fire like we did every other fire in the city of Worcester, as if it was what they call a triple decker, a 3-story multifamily house. He said, we attacked a cold storage warehouse fire as if it was a residential dwelling. And they lost 6 firefighters in the process. That's eye-opening, that level of honesty, right? And if you think about it, the vast majority of fires in the United States are in single family or double family dwellings, 1 or 2 story or 1 or 2 family dwellings, vast majority. So when you have these big boxes or hospitals or nursing homes or whatever, college dormitories, it's different. It's the Gordon Graham thing, right? Low frequency, high risk. We're really good at the high frequency, low risk stuff. It's when we get into that other end of the risk frequency chart that we get into the danger zone. The life hazard, this is the number one thing. So this is coal, right? This is the number one thing that will drive your decision making. What is the actual life hazard? Because if in that survivability profile that you do, if you don't assess the life hazard, do you really need to commit people to harm's way? Is it time for a defensive operation? Is the fire either so well advanced that nobody could be alive in there, right? Or do you have opportunity? Can you take actions of opportunity? Right? But knowing that, having a sense of what the life hazard is for any structure on fire is super critical. And the type of occupancy and the time of day are the 2 biggest drivers for that. All right. So again, we go back a few slides. We think back to that picture in the left side. That's a fire. One of our apartment complexes in Tucson. It was about 1:30 in the morning when that picture was taken. Parking lot full of cars. All these things that in your mind say, oh boy, and it was a ripper. It was a 2-alarm fire plus some special call units. But it's like, that's not the bread and butter, right? That's not the common fire. So we need people to be sharp. Their size up game has to be, our company officers, the size up game has to be really, really sharp. Water supply. Doesn't matter to me if you lay in, lay out, don't put cotton on the ground, put cotton on the ground. If you have to do rural water supply operations, whatever you do is awesome. Just do it and have a plan for your water supply. Because the last thing you want to do is run out of tank water. That's a really bad look. That's a really, really bad look. Second only to not being able to get the water out of the tank effectively, which we've probably seen more than enough times also, right? But knowing your water supply and especially for your battalion chiefs, district chiefs, whatever, how long does that take to get set up? That takes a little bit of time. Right? So give your folks some breathing room on this. But again, first in company officer, you got to be thinking about, do I have 500 gallons? Do I have 750 gallons? Am I showing up on a ladder truck with no gallons? What are you going to do? Think about auxiliary appliances. These are your sprinkler systems, fire department connections, any kind of specialty systems that may be foam systems, things like that. Again, you can get a lot of this information from pre-planning. Most residential dwellings do not have sprinklers unless it's required by ordinance, but some people add them anyway. Whether or not here your code requires apartment buildings to have sprinklers, I don't know. But if there's a system on the structure, a fire department connection, it's there for a reason. Hook up to it, right? Really hook up to it. It's okay. You don't have to flow water into it, but practice. Hey, drivers, just practice, hook up to it. Make sure you know how, if nothing else, right? Because you don't want to be doing it for the first time when it's you know what is hitting the fan, and then not be able to perform. Okay. And then the S in was street conditions and special matters. Always challenging, right? Whether you face, obviously the picture in the upper left there is just a little bit mild humor. That's an LA City fire truck that drove on top of a sinkhole. But again, can we get to the problem, right? Traffic, parking, flooded roadways, all of it. And then I don't know if it's a deal here, but Chief Silvernail talked about St. Louis. Come to Tucson. Everything's got a gate for good reason. Yeah, but I mean, getting through security gates and whatnot can be really, really challenging. Parking lots, like, our apparatus isn't getting any smaller. We don't have European fire trucks here in the United States. Thanks to the EPA and others, we've got some really, really big trucks, which makes the fire chief's job interesting, trying to explain that to elected officials as to why this stuff is so expensive and so big. So, maneuvering room, things like that. Can we even get to the problem? And then I threw this picture in down here in the lower right. That's a picture from Baltimore in 2015, 2016, civil unrest, which has come full circle again, in the past few years, and firefighters having to go to work under police protection, right? So that, to me, that's a special matter, right? Now, if you make the decision for your department, you're not going to engage in that kind of operation. You just let it burn. That's okay. Baltimore's chosen a different path. That's cool. But just, again, something to keep in mind. Weather conditions. This is wherever you are in the country now. And the last thing I'm going to do is talk about climate issues, but you got to know what your weather condition is. And the biggest thing for us in the fire service, where this comes into size up, is where we are when the seasons change. And when I say where we are, I mean, what's our level of fitness, right? When I was working in Fairfax County, we'd go from winter, we'd have about 3.5 days of what we would call spring, and then it'd be 95 degrees and insanely humid. And a simple single-family dwelling fire would consume 2 alarm worth of resources, not because we couldn't put the fire out. We couldn't get people out of rehab because they hadn't acclimated to the change in the weather. We faced the same thing in Tucson. Okay. I left there yesterday. It was 104 degrees. Today, it's only 99. Beautiful. It's cool. I'm actually freezing. I like this right now. But seriously, and we, unlike the Phoenix Valley, we do get seasons in Tucson. We're at elevation, so it does actually, snow, flurry there sometimes in the winter. But same thing, it'll get really hot really fast. And we have people who aren't acclimated yet. So it's things you have to think about again. So as a company officer, right, what weather conditions are you dealing with? Up here in Montana, snow, right? Or at least in some parts of the state. In some places, a lot of it. Right? And it's going to slow you down. People are going to get hurt, right? You're going to have injuries, slips, trips, and falls, things like that. So whereas in a hot weather situation, you're dealing with people that are dehydrated. They can't get out of rehab because they can't get their pulse or blood pressure under control in time. They can't come down back within normal limits, things like that. Wind events, another one, windy days. It's a big deal for us. We're in Tucson. It's super windy too. It warms my heart when I hear a company officer give in as part of their on-scene report. If they've got a working incident, they will tell the truck company, do not break glass on side, whatever, depending upon the direction of the wind, right? Don't create that flow path. That's how you want your company officers thinking. You don't want what I showed in that video from Fairfax. Well-intentioned. Nobody went to go, sit to work. I'm going to go to work that day and I'm going to bust a bunch of windows and get some of my brothers burned up, right? But thinking about it might have prevented that problem. Thinking about it in advance. Okay, so the exposures, this is the E in weather. All right. Just again, so, where are your exposures? Do you have no exposures? Is it just a house in the middle of nowhere and a occupancy sitting out in a field or something, or in a lot, and you don't have to worry about it? Or is it, closely spaced buildings like you see here? Could be anything, right? But you have to address the exposure problem. And there's one of the photos here. Yeah. In the upper left, you see a hose stream being played on the house next to the one that's on fire, right? I think that's great, right? We know, and these are all just snapshots in time. That's the other thing I failed to say when I started this. These are all snapshots in time. So I caution, I have to check myself sometimes about being, the fire operations police when I see posts on Instagram or Facebook or any of the others, because you're just typically seeing a snapshot in time. But again, save what you can save, right? Save what you can save. So the severity of that exposure depends upon location and extent of fire, which we talked about as a previous item. Apparatus and staffing. Okay, this goes back to what I talked about with what do you have? What is your apparatus capable of? What is your department capable of providing? Right? What's your manpower or staffing look like? Are you running, driver only and people show up POV? Are you driver officer and people show up? Are you 3-person crew, 4-person crew, whatever, right? Just knowing what you have, because you can't run the full playbook until you have enough people to execute the play. Right? So what do you have? What's immediately available to you? What can you call on from nearby? I was in a class in the National Fire Academy, and I had a fellow with me in the class, and he was from a rural jurisdiction in Nebraska. And it's multi-alarm incident class. Anybody ever take command and control multi-alarm incidents? Great class. The poor guy was like, he was lost, man. He's like, there's no point in us calling a second alarm because the next closest town is 48 minutes, 50 minutes away if they drive 70 miles an hour. Like, I was like, oh, damn, never thought of that. So in rural areas, again, you do what you can do with what you have, but that's the point, is knowing what you have. Don't overextend yourself, right? Don't overextend yourself, because especially in a smaller community or a volunteer department, if somebody makes a tactical decision that you just can't justify and somebody gets seriously hurt, like can't serve anymore, or worse yet, killed, that's devastating. It's devastating in any department, but in a smaller community, I know it's that much worse, right? You're already dealing with retention and recruitment issues, just like major cities are, but why make it worse through a bad decision? Why make it worse through a bad decision? So think about that. The location and the extent of fires. We talked about area and height of the building, location and extent of the fire. Top floor fire is going to take time to get to, especially if you've got to hoof up a bunch of, several flights of stairs. Below grade fire, super dangerous. Please, 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 please. And we're going to talk in a second about the importance of 360s, but don't be the moth to the flame. Right? Don't be the moth to the flame. And what I mean by that is when we go to our training academies, regardless of what state it's in, and we're training our crews, especially our newer folks, we tend to run the same play over and over and over. Truck pulls up in front of the burn building, crew jumps out. Oh, we're going to run the hose line to the front door. Oh, let's see, front door. I know what's in here. I know where everything is in this building because I've searched this thing 300 times so far. And everybody high fives and goes back to the station later. Right. Check for basements or a subfloor or anything below grade is a firefighter killer. We know that. Fires out of the reach of ladders also can be super challenging. That hot smoke, right? High volume, high density, dark colored smoke, just ugly stuff. Watch out for that. And watch that smoke behavior. Is it lazy, hanging real low? Is it pushing? All those things that Dave Dodson talks about in his Art of Reading Smoke class. You don't have to be as good as Dave, just be a little bit as good. And your company officer will be better for it. So let's take a look at this fire. This is a Northern Virginia fire in a county that was adjacent to Fairfax. And I love this picture. It was in the newspaper, actually. So what you have here is one of these rows of row homes, townhouses, middle unit. You can see there is active fire on the second floor. All right. Where do you think that fire is? I know it's on the second floor. Front of the house, right? Front of the house, front of the occupancy. Some other things I love to talk about with this particular photo. What do you notice about the parking lot? Pretty empty, right? So what do you think that tells you about the potential life hazard? Lower, right? Middle of the work week. What, one car is parked there. So this isn't an abandoned place. So these people are gone and at work or at school or whatever. What do you notice about the smoke? Notice it's not going straight up, right? Where's the wind coming from? From side Charlie, right? Okay. So second floor fire, typically in these townhomes, like I said, the bedrooms are upstairs, the living, eating areas are on the first floor. So probably a bedroom fire, right? That's side Charlie. You can run in the front door of that house with every hose line you have in your fire department, and you're not putting that fire out until you get a line on side Charlie and put the fire out. All right. I say that to say this. You have to do a 360. You have to do a 360 on every structure. Doesn't mean you can't commit to some sort of operation before the 360 gets accomplished. You can do something, but you really should be leery about committing crews into the fire when you haven't got the full picture. All right, I talked about the snapshot in time. So if you go back to this picture, this is the snapshot in time of that first company rolling up in front. If they just run willy-nilly into that house, right, they're going to see a whole lot more fire real fast than what is supposed to be a second floor bedroom fire. So please, there are departments out there that have a very strict policy that crews will not commit to interior operations until the 360 is performed or a report is received on conditions from side Charlie. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's probably pretty smart to have something along those lines in place. We talk about time. So this is the 12th of the 13 items. Time is never on our side. It's always working against us. And here's all the elements of the time, what I think are the elements of the time factor for us, right? Time of day, time of year. How long has this fire been burning since somebody even noticed it and notified the fire department? What's your turnout? What's your out of shoot time? What's that look like? All right. Are you getting crews out the door in under 3 minutes, under 2 minutes, under 10 minutes? Right. Then your travel time. Okay. And how much time is it going to take if you need more help? Harking back to my friend from Nebraska, 40 minutes or so. All right. If you're in that kind of situation, again, these are just things to be thinking about as that company officer. The H, final one, is like special hazards, hazardous materials. They're everywhere now. I mean, everybody's garage has some sort of hazardous material in it, even if it's as simple as a 20-pound propane cylinder. Right. There's a lot of stuff. So like Aaron was talking about the gear and the cancer risk and whatnot, wearing the gear. And I talked about with the townhouse fire, wearing your gear, wearing it properly, wearing it all the time, things like that, super important. But as some of these photos show, and the big boom in the center picture on the top, that's West Texas. Anybody remember what happened there? Fertilizer storage facility blowed up, killed almost every firefighter in the city of West Texas. Yeah, bad day, right? So those are the 13 elements of size up. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip through past a couple of those videos, but I'll be happy to send you the links to them at a later point. They're just what they are. One's a video from a place called Beaver Dam, Oregon. Shows a house fire. I use it at FDIC because it shows a crew, crew of 3 shows up. You got some other people showing up POV, and they manage this house fire fairly well within 5 minutes. The other one's a more comical one. Thankfully, nobody got hurt, but it's an issue with a fire department in Delaware. They show up on the scene and they get off the engine. There's a building that's by itself in the center of a parking lot. Basically, it's a vacant commercial building, a 2-story home, but it was like a store of some kind at one point, but it's now vacant, out of business. They show up, same thing, moth to the flame. Firefighter runs over, pulls the line. There's a citizen videoing. The officer apparently knows the citizen. They're smoking and joking on the video, and the firefighter almost steps on a down power line. Right. So again, the moth to the flame thing. We got to get to the fire. We got to get to the fire. We got to get to the fire. There's a great Gordon Graham video. You got to watch it. It's 5 minutes long. Like Gordon says, slow down, slow down, slow down. So we're going to talk about the decision-making piece of this now. And so we've talked about the elements of size up, the 13 elements of size up, and all the things that go into that. And it kind of all condenses down into this risk benefit or hazard benefit matrix, right? Which at the end of the day, all those words and colors, risk a lot to save a lot, risk nothing to save nothing. Right? And a lot of times we read these NIOSH reports or injury reports, and we say to ourselves, what the hell were they thinking? Right? What were they thinking? How could this have happened? And what I'll say to you is, you're one call away from it happening in your department. I'm one call away in Tucson from that happening. And it's my job as the fire chief. It's my training chief's job. It's my chief officer's jobs to make sure our company officers hopefully never get to that point where they allow something to happen where somebody else could look back and go, what the hell was Tucson Fire thinking? Why would they do that? You don't want to ever be in that position. So we make decisions in 2 ways, and I'm not a neuroscientist by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just a fire chief, right? But this is how we make decisions, and we have 2 ways of doing it. And this one is what was known, if fire officer 1, the traditional or classical decision-making method, the 8-step, 7, some say it's 7, some say it's 8. But this is basically it, right? You analyze the situation, size up, right? So you're sizing up the problem. You identify, what is my priority here? You're triaging the problem. Is my big problem a fire problem? Is it a ventilation problem? Is it a rescue problem? Is it a water problem? What's my biggest problem? And in what order am I going to tackle these? You come up with your possible solutions, okay? Plans A, B, and C, right? You weigh the benefits. You put the one that you think is going to work best into play, see how it goes. You evaluate. If it doesn't work, cycle back, try plan B, right? That's classical decision-making. Naturalistic, or what used to be called RPDM, recognition primed decision-making, is the snap judgment decision-making. And this is what we rely on our company officers and our battalion chiefs to do most frequently, right? Because they have usually a very compressed window of time in which to make some pretty critical decisions. And it's based on experience and training, right? Experience and training. These are for those that remember the old Kodak carousel slide trays. I still use the slides in the slide tray analogy. A lot of people don't even know what that is anymore, but yeah, this is what's in your memory bank, right? This is what you've seen or something darn close to it that you can draw on to make a decision about how to deal with the issue. Okay. If the little slide thing gets jammed, for those who know what I'm talking about, the thing gets jammed, the film starts to burn up, basically your brain starts to cavitate. That's when it's time to do the old slow down, right? Revert to a different style of decision-making, take a step back. And the difference between naturalistic and classic decision-making, when to use them, is really a function of time. How much time do you have in order to make a decision? Single family dwelling fire at 2 a.m., cars in the driveway, kids' toys out front. You don't got time. You got to go to work, and you just got to make the best decision you're equipped to make. You get a train flipped over at an at-grade crossing in the middle of town at, something other than rush hour. Okay. And you're dealing with a little bit of a spill, not a major hazmat or anything. Sure, you got a massive transportation problem. You may have a little hazmat problem. But what you don't have is a huge life hazard, a life safety problem, as long as it's not really bad stuff. You got time to step back, time to think about it, time to call the right resources, whether it's your local hazmat team or regional hazmat team, whatever. It's all about how much time you have to make the decisions. So, what I've said so far boils down to these few points. You prioritize your problems based on your size up. You address them in order of severity. You allocate the resources you have to each problem. You track the assigned resources, all right? Order additional resources needed and have that plan B, plan C, even if it's just a orderly withdrawal and we're going to let it burn, which is okay. It's okay. As long as we've done what we can do, it's okay. You're not going to win every fight. That's the thing. The Miami Dolphins are the last, I forget what year. No other football team's gone undefeated through an entire season other than the Dolphins in 1970 something, right? So I'm a Vikings fan, so I'm used to decades of disappointment. I will say this about training before we get to the communications part and then we wrap it up. Live fire training. I came up in an era, and there's folks in the room, like I said, with a lot of gray hair, like me, where live fire training before NFPA 1403 was plentiful. We got a lot of it. We did good, right? The environment changed. Now NFPA 1403 comes along, and what is it, like 2 pallets and a thing of hay or whatever, right? And in the interest of firefighter safety, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. The environment changed. Now anymore, getting an acquired structure, like we can't, we don't. We're not even allowed to do it in the city. We have to do all our training burns out at the academy. So what do we rely on? And I know there's a vendor here, and this is not a pitch for them. I don't work for them, but I love simulator training. Who here's been on an airplane in the past 12 months? Okay. All right. Of those, commuter airline, the feeder airline, United Express, Delta Express, Funjet, whatever they are, right? You ever look at the cockpit crew? Like, have you seen a razor, son? You know what I mean? And that's not a knock on young people, but you are willing to trust your life to somebody who looks like they may have graduated from high school 6 weeks ago, and they're going to take you through the air at 450 miles an hour, and you're going to hope they're going to get the plane on the ground safely. But we are so resistant, and they don't learn to fly in the jets, right? Unless they're in the military, they don't learn to fly in the jets. They might fly a single engine airplane around a little bit, but most of their training time is sim time because it's way too expensive and risky to have people practicing flying the Embraer 175 around or the CRJ-7s. It's too expensive. So they rely on simulators. In the fire service, we are so resistant to sim training. I don't understand it. And I get it, but just because the way we've always done it, somebody mentioned it this morning, right? Chief Silvernell, I think. Makes me crazy. There's some great stuff out there. And you don't even have to invest a ton of money in it. You can do sim training with pictures. Like, if you don't have a training budget to even buy the computer program, take a picture and draw some fire on it and talk it through with your company officers and your battalion chiefs. Like, what would you do if? And throw them a curveball. Oh, you know what? Your second due engine got in a crash on the way here. Now your second due engine's now 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes away. What are you going to do? Right? Things like that. So they can build through some sets and reps the what ifs. What if it doesn't work perfectly? Because most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's not going to work perfectly. I've yet to be on the perfect fire ground. So rely on that simulated training. And we're going to talk about that with a little bit with this last part here. So the communications piece, think, breathe, speak. I left my cell phones on the table back there. Please don't steal them. But radio communications in the fire service have taken on the tenor of cell phone conversations. Why is that? Why do you think that is? I'll tell you why. Why I think it is, in my humble opinion, because 80-something% of what we do is EMS. And when firefighters and firefighter medics are making reports to the hospital, they're not talking to other firefighters, are they? They're talking to an ER tech or a nurse, maybe a doctor, right? And it's more like a conversation than rapid fire information. And I always tell people, listen to, if you get the opportunity, anybody here a pilot? Listen to, oh, thank you. Okay. Thanks, Chief. So listen to air traffic control communications. There's an app called Live ATC. You can listen, just listen to them. The amount of information that flows back and forth between the air traffic controllers and the pilots in a very compressed period of time is awesome. And they do it because they don't talk like they're on a cell phone having a conversation with their sister they haven't seen in 3 months, right? It's not, hey, Billy, it's Joe. Hey, Joe, yeah, there's a fire out on the back in the second floor and blah, 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 No, no. Engine 2 on scene, such and such address. Got a working fire in side alpha, second floor, bedroom fire, blah, blah, blah. Like, you paint the picture with very few words because you have to. One of the things that we go back to the NIOSH 5, poor communications. There's a firefighter in Northern Virginia, worked for Prince William County Fire Department. He died on April 16th of 20, I think it was 11. I could be wrong on the year. It was the same day as the Virginia Tech massacre. But Kyle Wilson worked for Prince William County Fire, wind-driven fire event, like 5:30, 6 a.m., kind of a shift change time for that department. And Kyle got trapped for a whole host of reasons, some tactical errors made, but he was trapped on the upper floor. Fire had burned. He was separated from his crew. Fire had burned the stairwell. He was trapped on the second floor. And he tried 18 times to make a mayday call before he was able to get his mayday call made because people would not shut up on the radio. You read that report, read the Prince William County report, not the NIOSH report, read the Prince William County report on that. And Motorola did an amazing job with that as well. So anyway, my point is a lot of information, convey it quickly. Have the social hour after the event's over. But so many fires I listen to, and I will listen to when I come. I'm not going to say I didn't hear anything bad here, but when I go to places and talk the night before I talk, like I nerd out on this, I'll listen to Broadcastify for the area I'm in and just listen to the radio traffic. And it's astounding to me how much public safety, fire, EMS, radio communications are conversational, and they should be business. We need to stick to the business. Like I said, so you can do your socializing later. Don't do it on the radio during the event. Talk to people by unit number, not by name, right? Use your ICS. Because I'll tell you, if it goes pear-shaped and God forbid you lose a firefighter, your state OSHA is going to come in and wipe the floor with you if your procedures aren't clean and your operations aren't good and your training records aren't solid. And that's just, OSHA is just the first worry you have, because then the lawyers come in and will feast on you. And I don't know how many communities can take multi-million-dollar lawsuits. Sovereign immunity only goes so far. So be really, really careful. So this part, the painting the picture thing, it tells other units coming in what you're presented with, right? Indicates to the incoming command officer the severity of the situation, and it sets the tone and the mindset for the initial phase of the operation. So we all know these people. You've got people who are extremely low talkers and they mumble on the radio and you're like, what the hell did they say? What was that? And then you got the screamers, sweet Jesus, it's all on fire, right? We all have them. I got them. I know you have them here, right? Key is to kind of bring them in and get them to practice. Again, that simulated radio practice on a training channel. I love when I hear one of my companies say they're going to go out of service, or not to go out of service. They need a training channel from communications because they're going to practice size up reports. I love it. I love to hear that. That's 15 minutes of some well spent time. So please do that. Please do that. And bring the outliers in towards the middle and shorten your communications. The on-scene report, again, if you have SOPs on this, SOGs, please follow them. But I'm telling you, these are the critical things that I think should be in them. One is confirm the location by address or exception. I can tell you in my city, more often than not, the person having the fire is not calling it in. It's a neighbor in the street over or whatever, 2 doors down. They never get the address right, almost never. So confirm. Your first in officer should confirm the address by exception. If they got dispatched to 126 Maple and the fire is at 261 Maple, tell everybody, because it may change response routes. It may change the water supply plan, but tell people where you are. Announce your water supply plan. What is your water supply plan? You're going to have your own water. Do you need some? Did you lay in? Do you need somebody to reverse lay? Whatever, right? The type of structure, the occupancy, and what's evident. What do you see, right? And be specific. To mark on the scene of a working fire and say, I'm on scene with fire showing, tells everybody nothing, because they already know they're being dispatched to a fire. It just means you're going to go to work. But where is this fire, right? Where? Look at these pictures here, right? Those are multifamily dwellings, like 8 apartments, 4 per floor, 2 on each side of the stairwell. If somebody marks on scene and they got a fire in this building, I just think they have a fire in an apartment building. It means a lot that it's on an upper floor, right? It means a lot, because if it's on a lower floor, you might have a much bigger issue with respect to fire extension, smoke, travel, things like that. Again, so just be specific. And then any special instructions, right? Like, are there safety hazards? Are there immediate victim rescues? Things like that. So those are the key elements of an on-scene report. Then a situation report. And I also love when people do this. And I hope you will let your people do this if they feel they need the time. I have captains who will mark on scene of an incident and they'll say, everybody hold your radio traffic until I complete my size up. I love it. I love it. And then if I hear somebody else talk before that captain speaks again, I'm on the phone to the battalion chief in the morning when he's on his way home saying, hey, I listened to this fire last night and XYZ. Like, did you not listen to the radio? The man said, or the captain said, he or she needed time to complete their lap, complete their size up. That's okay, right? Take the time you need. Everybody can wait. Everybody can wait. They're going to get there. You just need to tell them what's going on. You give your situation report after you've completed your size up, once you have a more complete picture of the situation. So any changes from the on-scene report. So you're on scene, maybe you only get to see the 2 or 3 sides of the structure. You haven't seen side Charlie yet. So you can, hey, I've seen side Charlie. I also have fire on the 2nd floor on side Charlie, whatever, but any changes or additions from that. Instructions to incoming units. This makes some people really bristle. Look, I don't know what you don't know. I don't necessarily, when I was a company officer, I'm thinking, listen, we have a designated playbook for single family dwelling fires. This is what I want. I need the second engine to come in, establish my water supply, take command of the incident until the battalion chief arrives, and send their crew to pull a backup line from my rig. I need the truck to throw ladders, conduct a hazard assessment, another 360, prepare for ventilation and search operations, right? I would say those things on the radio. That's a very common thing back where I came from in the National Capital Region. And some people say, I know my job, man. Like, okay, cool. I'm glad you know your job. I want to know that you know your job. And I want you to know that I want you to do this because I'm running the show right now until the chief gets here and runs the show. You don't get to do, that's called freelancing. And freelancing gets people killed, right? Let your officers, but the first in officer, I'll tell you, in the eyes of the law, is the incident commander, not the fire chief, not the battalion chief, not the captain who's got 20 more years experience than the guy or gal who's a captain just got pinned 2 weeks ago. The first arriving officer is the incident commander in the eyes of the law. Hard stop in all 50 states. They are in charge. I don't care what your policies say. I'll tell you what the courts will say, because the courts will not defer to your policies. Sorry. Request for any additional resources you need, whether it's greater alarms, specialty units, things like that, and then a command statement. Are you going to stay in command? Are you going to transfer command? What are you doing? And what mode are you going to operate in? Those simple things, right? Those 4 or 5 things in each of those 2 reports, you can do those in less than 7 seconds in each one of them. 7 to 10. And it sets the tone for the whole operation. I've just given you an hour and 45-minute class in like an hour and 7 minutes, I think. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I am happy to share this with you. I know it's being recorded, but if you feel you would benefit from this, just email me and I will send you all my material. I will get to speak with you again on Friday afternoon. So until then, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.